They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking,
hi, this is Nico. You're listening to my dad Rafal, also known as the White Rabbit, and James Jardine on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Buckle up and enjoy.
deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Each blood think back to the last time that we were happy.
All right. There's nothing quite like enlisting your kids to do your intro for you because they're cute and they work for free.
I'm still waiting for the strobe lights and stuff for you behind
That's right.
your background,
We need to
Raph.
get like a strobe light effect. I got to get that on the request list. All right, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is I have no idea what episode this is. This is almost 600. We're getting there. And who better to have on the show to I don't know, help us rant and rave a little bit, maybe have a fun discussion than the one and only Mr. Jeremiah Grossman, coming to us live from what appears to be Jay Leno's garage.
It's my little not so quiet hideaway.
Nice. I love it. It has been a minute since I talked to you. All right, so I guess let's start with this. Catch us up on all things Jeremiah Grossman, because like everybody knows you from White Hat,
Yeah.
that thing. Give us the 60-second tour from there on.
So White Hat was a great run, 15 years. I was there,
That's a
and
long
it was acquired, so it was a good success for all involved. Because I'm just a nonstop person, I don't really take time off. I went over to Sentinel One when it was just a tiny little startup. Almost immediately afterwards, it was they came out of Israel. They had amazing tech, and it was like, for me, it was a put up or shut up thing, because I always hated the antivirus space. So it was either get in, do something good, or shut up about it. So I went and helped out. We did a ransomware warranty there, and spent 2 years there, had a lot of fun, and the company just took off and went IPO. After a couple of years there, I formed the same team that we were working with at White Hat to do a company called Bit Discovery to go after the attack surface management problem. It's funny. It's as security professionals, we really should know the things that are out there that we need to protect, and no one really solved that problem. So we raised a tiny bit of money, grew really quickly, and in just 3 years we got acquired, and got to spend some time at Tenable. Enjoyed our experience, and now we're in the kitchen working on our next thing.
I got to tell you, the ransomware warranty thing was kind of cool. Nobody done that, and there was no shortage of people that thought you were sort of mad for doing that. Yours truly included, but yet it worked. Like you didn't break the bank. So that was I'll say risky maneuver. I think a risk you clearly took. How did you get there? Like, how did you just go, we should offer a warranty?
So, when they brought me in, it was to do go-to-market strategy more than anything else. So when I get there, right, I'm looking at the statistics that the FBI is reporting. This is 2015, before ransomware really took off. It was like, and I saw this perfect storm. Bitcoin was becoming a thing, and the FBI was showing triple ransomware reports way back when. And I was like, It's coming. They figured out a way to profit. And I found this was going to be the key pain point in the world of antivirus that people was going to be hit by. So that was the bet. Then, of course, we're in the antivirus market or endpoint market, and there's like 50 different players. So how do we differentiate? So we knew ransomware was going to be a thing. The product was incredibly effective, at dealing with this problem. And I said, if the product works, why don't we just warranty the product as being effective? No one else will dare do it. Not necessarily because their products don't work. It's because they don't know if their products work or not. They really just didn't know. We did. And so I designed this ransomware warranty. And of course, there's concern that there might be claims. So I put the data together. I showed it to our insurance carrier, and they underwrote the liability on it. So even if I got it way wrong. We were backstopped, so everything was going to be okay. So here's what got really interesting. Of course, ransomware took off, and
Yeah, it did.
one of the presentations I was doing, it's actually recorded. I'm on stage in I think it was either Dublin, no, I think it was Belfast, Ireland. I'm on stage talking about ransomware, and I'm warning people that it's coming. And all of a sudden, I have my phone is on the podium, and it starts just going nuts, right? And I'm like, what is going on? I'm inferring while I'm talking about my comments that the national I forget the name of the term for the healthcare sector in network in the UK has just exploded with ransomware, and it's going
Oh,
down.
NHS.
Yeah, the NHS, right? And by this time, we have tons. Sentinel One has tons of customers with the product that have warranties on it. And I go, oh my god, there's a ransomware worm going around. And so I have to quickly finish this presentation, and then I run out of there. I tell everybody I have to run. I'm sorry, I have to go lock myself in my hotel room to deal with this. So I'm in my hotel room. I'm learning about the worm, and seeing. I'm working with our engineers to seeing if any of our customers are getting popped. And I'm in there for like 8 hours to like late into the night. Long story short, our product worked. We had no incidents and certainly no claims. That right there was a proof moment that we had it right, and then the company just took off from that point.
See, that's one of those things like this kind of gets me to the kind of discussion I really wanted to have, and I know we got tiptoe around a little bit of this, but that's okay. Um, yes, the industry at large, I think we both agree, is more interested in continuing to provide aspirin and Tylenol and pain relievers and fever reducers than it is to actually curing the patient. James, you and I have said this, I think,
Yeah.
probably more times than anybody really wants to give us any credit for. But like we've all said, we've walked the show floor at RSA and Black Hat and all these conferences, and you look around and you're like, none of like we're clearly going after the symptoms, not the root cause. Give me your perspective on this because I know you have one and I want to let you tell it.
Sure. Yeah, right. Every year we have RSA and Black Hat. We all walk the show floor, and then we lament at the amount of snake oil and weird new jargon that it's out there. We complain about it constantly. And it's true. I mean, we're supposed to be information security professionals. We're supposed to be giving people peace of mind, and it's very difficult to take ourselves that seriously when there's magicians, balloon animals, and mascots on the show floor. I think we
Amen.
can do better. But where I got to it is that whatever company and products I built, I wanted to be the best at it, the best on the market, and I really wanted people to not get hacked after they use my product, and I wanted the data and the evidence. And so our industry is one of those industries where, like, here's the culture: buy our product and you'll be secure. And the customer says, like, really, really, well, we'll be secure. And we go, yeah. And then they get hacked, and the industry says, well, sucks to be you. Security's not perfect. Like that's just a weird way to carry out a
Yeah.
professional existence. So I just said, I'll start warranting what I do. I know for a fact it works. For me, this isn't a vendor problem. I've helped a dozen different companies develop warranties now, and they all did really well. This is actually a customer psyche problem. For some reason, InfoSec has the customer convinced, by and large, that they're not deserving of a warranty, that the vendor does not need to have skin in the game. And I just wholly reject it. I tell everybody, you deserve a warranty. Ask your vendor if they know statistically if their product works. If it does, then they can warranty it. If they don't, then there's something else going on there.
So
Does that
this
tie
brings me
into
back.
does that tie into similar things with like the shared responsibility models that come out, with cloud and, hey, we've got our part, you've got your part. Does warranty kind of sit alongside that of we've got our part and you've got your part, or does it sit outside of that?
No, I think it's exactly right, and I don't think we have to do anything different than every other industry. Like, for instance, we got these mobile phones, right? And there's a warranty on it, and it says, it's water resistant or waterproof up to a certain amount of feet. If you take it down, if you submerge it and it breaks, there's a warranty to get it replaced. But if you take it down below that level, you did something wrong and you don't expect it to be replaced. So that just on a phone, a watch, a car, yes, there's a shared responsibility. So all the security vendor has to do is tell the customer under what conditions they should use their product. And if they do that, the product will perform as advertised. That's the shared responsibility. It's not complicated. In fact, it's entirely common and consistent.
You know, what I find interesting is um, there's this measure of snake oil might not be. Maybe I don't want to go that hard on it, but it's certainly. Do you remember? Okay, let me back up. Do you remember back in our AppSec days? Okay, I was at HP, Hawken Web AppSec Tools, and all of our kit that all of our testing stuff was really good at testing the things that we knew about. Like, hey, we were better at .NET than the other guys. We tested on .NET, and boy, it looked great. You put it on Java stuff, we're like, ooh, wow, we weren't ready for that one. So if somebody would have asked me back then, how effective is this? I would have been like, pretty good at this when we're ready for it. Um, now, is is it that the market or the state of the art in technology has advanced? Is that what you're? I mean, are you? Is that kind of your line of thinking, or could we have done this back then?
No, well, I did this back then at White Hat. So we did
Fair
a
enough.
warranty for White Hat Sentinel way back when. And the way I approached it was is that, we said we found these vulnerabilities and we were good. And our competitors would say we found the same vulnerabilities and we're better. And there was no way for me to prove how good I was or to dispel a lie by my competitors. There was no way. So the way I approached it was I would ask our teams, how often have we missed a vulnerability that we should have found that got the customer hacked for a material loss? How often did that occur? And so we had 10 years of data on 1,000 customers and untold number of websites. And at that time that I did the analysis, it was only 8 times where we legitimately messed up. So then I had the evidence. I knew out of all these customers, all this testing, 8 times we messed up where we would have had to pay out a loss. Now I had my metrics. No one was asking us to be perfect, just accountable. And so I set up a warranty, and I knew my competitors out there had no idea how effective they were. Absolutely no idea of how often their customers got hacked by something they missed. So we go to the market, we do this, and we start doing better than everybody else because we're the only ones willing to put our money where our mouth was. So
I tell you what, of all the there have been third party services for a while that would test products and try to tell you how effective they were. Uh, None of those were really good. I mean, they were good at taking people's money. None of them were really good at giving us empirical data, which just proves to me that the only ones that really knew would have been the vendors. And a lot of vendors simply, like I've worked for companies that keep metrics on our hit rate and our miss rate, but a lot of them, the vast majority, do not. And I wonder if that's that they're disinterested or they don't know how.
I think there's a couple answers there. One is, of course, vulnerability management or the act of scanning for vulnerabilities is an inexact science. It's more art than science. So you're gonna miss things, but that's not really the point. Is you don't want to miss things that the adversary will find and exploit. That's the important one. And
Fair.
since we are a live service, we had that data. If you were shipping just a tool that you gave to the customers and they ran it, you had no data. So they could not offer a warranty because they really had no idea if their product was effective at stopping the bad guy. We did.
Right. So it all hinges on because that's where I was going to go next with this is like you can give the best tools in the world to an idiot, and they're going to do a terrible job with it. So this hinges on running basically a SaaS platform because you could control the expertise and you had the variables and you could actually you know you guys in your contracts told people we're collecting the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we told them, and then it wasn't just us. We told the customer that we needed proper authentication credentials so we can scan authenticated. We needed enough scan time to do our work. So back to James' point, there was a shared responsibility. You had to give us enough of what we needed to do our job well. Then it was our job to do our job well, and we had the data to measure everything. And that was our unfair competitive advantage. We knew how good we were, and everybody else did not.
That's an
So
interesting thing to think about with like the cloud versus on premise, right? Like, we won't name the companies that do it, right? But obviously, there's ones you bring in house, like you mentioned. That
yeah,
ability for how do they improve to a certain level if you can't get any of those metrics or see the telemetry, right? Like, hey, we shipped it to you, you scan it, and they're scanning thousands of different types of files and all this stuff, but you don't ever really see how your
Exactly.
program reacts to that versus the ones that are like more SaaS based, right? Where you get that ability to see it and then improve upon it. Whereas you wouldn't see that, right? If it's, if it's just a standalone product that's being sent out. Like, that's an interesting thought about SaaS versus on-prem. Obviously, with all the other things that come with that too. But
Well, the way the evolution of that market played out, I was there at the time. So, application became a thing, and then the first the first business model for vulnerability assessment of websites was the consultant. Please come in and test my website. Someone would bring their laptop. They would test the site for a week. They would give you a PDF report, and you would pay them, and they would say, "See you next year." And I remember that time selling those types of services, and the customer would go, like, the boss or the CFO or the CEO goes, "Wait a minute, you want to bring outsiders into our network to hack us? Are you out of your mind?" Like, that was the
yeah.
psyche back then. And over time, the hacks happened, and they got over that, and they brought in outside experts, but that had an issue with scalability. So the next iteration is that we started selling tools to the customer to run it themselves, the desktop scanners. And then the same pushback was there. We go, wait a minute, you want to buy tools to let our security people and our developers hack us, like, internally? Like, you want to hack, like, you want our employees to hack us? Yeah, for scale and security. And they're like, you're out of your mind. The business eventually, got over that one, and scanners took over. And then myself and White Hat finally came along and said, you know what? You don't have the expertise to do it with these tools. Your people are better served by doing the things that only they could do at the job. Let us do all the vulnerability scanning. And then, of course, the pushback was, wait a minute, you want to take outsiders to scan us remotely and host our vuln data off the system? You're out of your mind. And that's what everybody told us. We're like, yeah, but we're better, faster, cheaper than everything. Then the hacks happened, and then the industry finally migrated. And then the last one came, and this is where we entered the world of bug bounty. Is that over time, when you look at vulnerability management, it's it's pay for effort, not results. So, like, here's how the economics works. If we're testing a website, you get paid X for the year. That's what you make. It doesn't matter how many vulns you find. So let's say you find 100 vulns for X price, and there's a vulns per dollar ratio that happens. You expect the customer and the website to get better over time, which it does. So the vuln volume drops of what you're finding. So that means then every year you're paying the same rate, and the vuln volume, I mean, the dollar per vulns goes up. You're paying more until such time becomes economically advantageous to move to a bug bounty model where you're paying for results, not for effort. Then, of course, the pushback is wait a minute, you want to let any random person test our security and then you're going to pay them to do it discreetly? You're out of your mind.
Yeah, we've seen that before.
But the hacks happened, and that model started taking over. So what we see is the more mature companies have adopted the bounty model because it's more economically advantageous.
So, all right, you said the vendors weren't the problem. Tell me a little bit about that, because I mean, I know where you're going with this, but give the audience a flavor, because I agree with you kind of
It's
mostly.
not so much like it's not so much the customers are the problem, is that they are. I just think I'm on their side. I want them to demand more. This is a demand problem, not a supply problem. If the customer says, I demand this and I'm willing to pay for it, the market will respond. If the customer says, I want better, more provably effective products that come with a warranty, and I want the vendors to be accountable, and they leverage their dollars and their buying power, the vendors will give it to them. They will. I mean, the infosec market on the vendor side is just coin operated. We want to sell things to them. Ideally they make a difference, but it's really the customers that hold all the control. So they're not the problem. They represent an opportunity for us to evolve.
You know, oddly enough, um, this kind of brings me to this. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe the buyers have gotten better today, but when I was a buyer, and arguably it's been a minute, but we just needed to get the thing done. And so, you know, it was who's the cheapest, who can do it the fastest. Um, they assumed that the results would be all things being equal, and they weren't, right? Uh, but I don't know that that's changed so dramatic. I don't know that. I know some companies are saying will definitely say, listen, if the results are better, I'll pay you more. But is that a broadly sweeping trend, do you think?
To be perfectly honest, Raf, I actually think it's a non-issue for what's coming. Um,
Okay.
so let's say we take AppSec vuln management and network vuln management. We do our job very well, and we bury our customers in vulnerabilities. Just absolutely bury them so bad that they need more products to make sense of it. All of it. And if you look
Sounds
real
familiar.
close, at least half of the vulnerabilities never get fixed, and the ones that do take forever to get fixed. Okay, that's a problem. But we also know that the vast majority, like 99.99% of the vulns, will never get exploited because they never do. So
Yeah.
what are we really doing? Why are we finding all these issues that the adversary does not care about? So then I look to, like, okay, so we have this list of CVEs out there that are in the ecosystem. We scan to see what the customers are actually exposed to, but there's one that's after that. We have to look at what the vulnerabilities that the adversary actually exploits that results in material loss. So I was managed to get some data out of the insurance carriers about what CVEs, the specific numbers that actually get exploited, not that we just see in the wild, the ones that lead to claims, right? Those are the important
Okay.
ones. And I got the data from 3 different carriers. I had the list of CVEs so I can see them. A couple of things stood out. One carrier gave me 22 CVEs. That's all they had that represented of the software exploit breaches. 99% of their losses came from 22 CVEs. One gave me about 60, one gave me about 80. That's all. Out of the hundreds of thousands of CVEs, only that many actually matter. So just consider that for a moment. Now, the
Huh.
carriers at the end of the day are what's holding the financial bag. What do you think eventually they're going to do with that data? They're going to be very, very prescriptive in the future about what we do in our security programs and what we fix and when. And this thing that we called CVSS is only a temporary thing. It's because we lack anything better. Very soon, we're probably going to make that score unnecessary because the carriers are going to say, fix all these vulns. We don't care what you score them. Otherwise, you're not getting insurance. And that's the only thing that'll matter.
I'm a little shocked that carriers knew could get you down to the CVE. To be honest, wasn't expecting that. That means that the market maturity has gotten significantly higher since I last looked.
Well, the
Um,
breaches come in, they get a 500,000, a million, $100 million loss. They're going to do an investigation to figure out what happened.
Fair
They're going
enough.
to do that.
Yeah, that's a fair enough. Look, whether it's whatever drives it, we end up in a state where um, we have 20, 30, 40. At one point, I think there were like maybe north of 40 different EDR vendors at one point. It doesn't. I mean, look, an economist looks at this and says, "Well, okay, as long as they're all making money, that's cool." The practical human in me goes, "What the hell? How?" Right? And so, to me, I've always looked at that and said, something's wrong. Like something's wrong with that. There are not that many different ways to solve this problem. Um, and and are we just all equally good or equally bad at it? And frankly, like, but again, it takes me back to a lot of the tech we have today addresses the end result of a bad configuration, not patching, all these behaviors we'd like to fix. It's really hard to put out products and services that change the behaviors or prevent those behaviors from happening. But that's not where it's like the old story about Black Hat, right? Everybody goes to Black Hat to find out all the cool ways to break something. Like very few people go to see how you can actually fix something, make something better. So the incentives are in the wrong spot, aren't they?
You unpacked a lot there, so let me see. Let me see what I can do.
Sorry.
No, no, it's fine. It's a good conversation because of that. First, yes, I mean, if you go back, let's say, 50, 100 years ago, like let's say, I'm into cars, right? The auto manufacturers, there was 40, 50, 100 auto manufacturers back in the day because the cars were the new hotness. Over time, the market consolidated around a few manufacturers, even today, because they've largely figured it out and customers know what they want. So that's a natural evolution of an economy. When you have a brand new market, you have a whole bunch of competitors trying different things, and the market will eject the things that they really don't like and finally settle on a couple that they do. So I don't think it's good nor bad, just the natural, evolution of things as we see it. Um, then when it comes down to overall market incentives, um, I think in security, actually, let me ask you guys this question. If you look back at the last 10 years of breaches that you read about, who got breached, what happened, how it happened, can you think of what breaches truly impressed you by way of we had no idea how to prevent that, how to stop it? Which one truly impressed you guys, if any?
I don't know if there's any at the top of my list. I mean, you look at them and it's like the hindsight 2020. Like, yeah, we should have done that, right? Like,
I think the only one that's truly impressed me was the SolarWinds breach, because that one took some ingenuity and it was good. Like whoever did that, like the group that did that, the individuals that did, they were good. But the big ones, right? Remember, everybody said there's going to be a big one that's going to happen. Okay, so the credit reporting agency, not impressed, missing patch, allegedly. Sony Pictures, remember that one? That giant, flaming
Yeah.
ball of, like, unimpressed.
So that means we have all the tools necessary, all the knowledge necessary to stop the vast majority of breaches. We just don't. So that means we have an incentives model, incentives problem somewhere in the system, that those that are in the best position to stop these things are not incentivized to do so. I don't think it's a tech problem we deal with. I think it's incentives, and it comes down to software liability. I mean, basically, all of InfoSec is a result of the big software manufacturers shipping shoddy products. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the
Fair
day.
enough.
Um, so yeah, that's just we're going to need software liability at some point to get out of this mess. I've been bounding this drum for a while, and it'll happen. It's just going to take a while. And now we have Jen over at CISA beating the same drum because they're figuring it out. They're figuring it out too.
So how do we get to holding Microsoft liable? How do we get to the point where a breach happens? We determine that it was a patch that Microsoft, or I don't know, sorry, not big enough Microsoft,
Sure.
desktop vendor A,
Sure.
right? Somebody that built it out, whatever. It was a bug in their software that had been previously undisclosed. We can link this breach to that via dollar amount, and we go that we're suing you because you're in breach of something.
So there's a couple of ways it can, and the way the market's handling is like if I host with someone, if I outsource my business IT environment to some vendor, I can ask them to be liable for the security of it financially, and they can insurance back it. I don't care what they do, handle it, but that happens. That's one way at the bottom end of the market, the consumer edge of the market, that they have some control over. At the top end, our number one problem is, what I heard Miko Hippinen said was the biggest lie in the history of the internet, and that's called the EULA, right? The thing that we all hit agree on. That's very problematic, and that's probably going to take an act of Congress to invalidate the provisions of it, of no warranty, no liability,
Right.
EULAs. Basically, those are legally valid right now in a court of law. We're going to have to counteract that with an act of Congress. I have no idea when or how that's going to happen, but that's what would need to happen. But one other thing that you mentioned earlier about like 40 different vendors is that we're probably never going to really get away from it because information security is so important and it's tantamount to national security for every nation. And the thing
Fair.
is that, let's say in the US, would we use, let's pick on them, would we use Chinese made antivirus in the US or in the federal government? No. So basically, infosec like tech is going to balkanize. There's going to be a set of vendors that every region trusts for a variety of reasons. So we're, no matter what, we're going to
Sure.
need collections of different vendors in different regions. Especially the more important is there's not going to be one or two antivirus vendors that are going to take the world because no one's going to trust them.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I mean, look, we're looking at network technology and packet pushers, right? And we're looking at I just blanked on the vendor from China that we made illegal to use here for critical infrastructure. Why can't I think of who it is?
Is that Yahweh or I
Yahweh,
really
Huawei, HUAWEI or something like that. Huawei.
I never figured out how to pronounce it properly.
Yeah, those guys, right? And we created we investigated, found clear links between the company and the military regime. We're like, well, that's going to be an obvious one. Um, okay, I'm further. I want to pull a little bit more on this software liability thing, because if it's going to take an act of Congress, this is not a political statement, but good God, I'm not holding hope. We can't figure out how to tie our shoes together in the government right now. Like we can't fix things that are critical to national security. Like we can't secure our borders. Getting software liability.
I hear you, and I can't say that you're wrong. I mean, apathy is understandable. I'll just counter, at least, let's say in the UK, as an example, we got GDPR and we got pop ups all over the internet. They did something. I'm not saying it was a
Fair.
good thing, but they got something through their channels of government. Can we do something similar for software liability? Perhaps. Will it be good? Who knows? The implementation is going to be everything. But I just won't say that the attempt won't be possible.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
does that
Somebody's got to do something.
like does that have issues though? Because I mean, I was just reading something today about Florida legislation moving forward with these like safe harbor things, right? Like that says like if you did XYZ, or like if you're following CIS controls or you did this, right, like that you can't be held. So like you've got this counteracting of, hey, we gotta be able to put the liability someplace, right, and accountability someplace. But then we've also got the other side in the government saying, hey, we want to help protect against that type of stuff as well.
You're absolutely right. There's going to be all kinds of gremlins in that kind of legislation. I mean, the top line could say software vendors held liable, feet to the fire. But if you do this thing, no liability, which no one will ever read the fine print. I could easily see something like that that happening, and then it would just be an evolution. I mean, what government does is never perfect the first time. It's probably never perfect or even close to it forever. But I don't know of another way other than legislation. Like, I'm a tech person. I don't like going to the government for anything.
That
But
makes two of us.
we're clearly not dealing with a technical problem. We're dealing with a liability problem. I don't know how to. I'm not smart enough to know how to work around that with tech.
Is that something that would get pushed though? Like we've seen, Raf, we've talked about this a ton of times
Yeah.
with like insurance agencies are actually helping drive a lot of different things. You'd mentioned before, right? The consumer has to be able to drive stuff.
I don't think the consumer has enough power. I think ultimately this ends up a battle between two lobby groups: Microsoft, Apple, and the big software lobby, tech lobby, versus insurance companies. Because
That
someone's
could
going
be
to end up holding the bill for this.
one that's coming down. Because imagine, like, let's say cyber insurance is effectively compulsory now. It's getting harder to get because the capacity just isn't there. The carriers are suffering major losses and more. And at some point,
Uh-huh.
they're going to go, we can't offer cyber insurance if Microsoft is allowed or whoever is allowed to operate this way. And then if you're Microsoft or any of the large vendors, your feet's going to be held to the fire now. So you're going to spend as much lobbying dollars as you possibly can avoiding this liability. So the war is
That's
going to
right.
be big. But the thing is, that war will happen no matter what. I mean,
I think that's where
AI,
it happens.
AI is going to
I
answer
think,
all the
yeah.
time.
I'm picturing this giant epic, like Lord of the Rings style battle, to end all battles, because the insurance, like I said, the liability, the money has to come from somewhere. If cyber insurance is, like you said, becoming basically compulsory, it's hard to survive without it, and yet it's getting harder to get. And at some point, those carriers are going to say, "Listen, if you're running this operating system, you're going to pay 30% more. People can be like, whoa, wait a minute. And maybe they start moving away from those operating systems. And then that vendor goes, oh, crap. Like maybe there's a no shit moment there. I don't know.
Yeah, so then we have actual market corrective forces. Unfortunately, like once you've picked your OS, you picked your web server, if the carrier says I'm not covering it, it's really hard to move off of it, like really, really hard, especially
I
snow.
know.
So those dollar flows will then cause CFOs and CEOs to make better, more thoughtful choices about their tech platform. It's not whatever the developers or the IT manager wants; it's what the carriers will cover. So it adds a whole other dimension to procurement.
Man, lawyers and actuaries win again.
Well, they have the data. They should win. They have the best data. InfoSec doesn't have the best data. Now, if you see the way the world's moving right now, I think for a lot of companies, we hit in InfoSec, we hit peak prevention. If we doubled our
Yeah.
spend, would we half the breaches? Or if we halved our spend, would we double the breaches? I think right now we have to put a lot more emphasis at fast detection and response of breaches. Like, because the way I looked at the losses, when I'm reading the insurance carrier data, let's say we take the Equifax breach, since that's ancient history. I think the only reason that was 200 and 300 million dollars in losses is because the adversary was in the system for months. If they broke in and we gave them access for a week, it's not that big of a loss. So I think we only have to be so good at prevention. We have to get 1,000 times better in fast detection and response.
Man, that has been the drumbeat for the last decade, right? Has it? So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I know we're running out of time, but that's a lot of ground to cover. So, if that's the case, so you've got market forces like dollars spend and moving the markets. And if we're really, and by the way, just to answer your hypothetical, because I feel like doing that, I think if you double the spend, you do not have HALV the breaches.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at that point where you have like that inverse hockey stick curve. Like the first dollar you spend, huge impact. By the time you get to your thousandth, you're like, eh. By the time you get to your millionth, you're like, is the needle moved? I can't tell. Give me a microscope. I think we're there because I can tell you that as a vendor, working for a vendor, I can see it in budgets because I talk to CISOs and CIOs, and budgets were doing roof this over the last couple of years, last 2 decades, and in the last three to 4 years, they are more and more. Unless they're immature. So I'll make the caveat: unless the program is completely immature or they're building from scratch, more and more security budgets are flattening. And the CFO, the leadership's going, what is it that else that you could possibly like? You've got everything. We
Yeah.
bought 3 of everything.
Um, let's just do one more thought exercise because this is fun. Let's say you had $1 million cybersecurity budget for defense. How much time and money would it take for the adversary to beat your million?
Oh, you know what? There are incidents that we can point to that it's like $1.50 and
Right.
15 minutes.
That's the problem. Is our we don't have an economic advantage. You could probably beat a million with 1,000, let alone $10,000. What we really need is new security models where the adversary has to spend 10x what we do to break in, rather than
That's
a
right.
hundred times less. We don't think in those terms.
Well, the fact that you've got a vulnerability in an operating system that's available on 10 million workstations worldwide, the economic model for that is freaking brilliant. You spend a couple $100, a couple $1,000. Say you spend $1 million to develop the exploit for that works well. You let it loose and it executes 10 million times. Like at that point, would I make that investment? Hell yeah! Like on the right side of the law, right? Obviously, but
So this is what I would say. What the opportunity here is for the next generation of security entrepreneurs, think about in terms of like looking at what the adversary is doing. How do you 10x, 100x their costs? If you find ways to do that, we start winning.
well, listen. There's a question you posed, and this is probably close to 15, maybe longer years ago, we back when in the AppSec days, I can almost remember. I think we were all sitting around at National Harbor at a Gartner event. Or was it no? Back when it was what was that security that used to be that security conference that used to be there that went defunct after a bit? Do you know what I'm talking about? Is that the Gaylord there? It was like
Oh,
Black
This-
Hat bought them.
like
Was that
I
the
saw
CSI conferences or
CSI conference.
yeah?
yeah.
I remember, so a bunch of us were sitting around, and you asked the question: if you had 10 SQL injection vulnerabilities and you remediated 8 of them, how much more secure are you? And
Yeah.
like I've done that mental exercise about a million times in my head in like just idle hours, and there's no shortage of ways to answer that question, which means the problem is still as bad as it was back then.
And so if you're not going to fix all of them, why'd you bother finding any of them? You could have got hacked for free, I promise.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So,
And that is a very sad way to reach that conclusion. You're like, well, it's right. It's like, if you're not going to fix everything, why bother? It's like if you've got hey, listen, if you're getting on an airplane and like 8 out of the 9 bolts are loose on that window that's going to pop out and you only tighten one of them, why bother?
yeah, I mean, because that's security professionals, despite our reputation having happy ears, the business asks that question instinctively. They
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fun. I gotta have you back on to do this again because this is exciting. It's a crazy way to to talk about the fact that this industry fundamentally needs to change because we have been on the hamster wheel of stupid for so long.
The opportunities are there. We could still move the needle. The new bright people, whoever's coming in new with new ideas, bright ideas, smart people that want to make a difference, you can. That's the thing. We don't have anything figured out. We're ready.
Yeah.
There's a problem
So
though that like new people coming in, are they getting caught up in the old things? Right? Like the first thing you do when you come in is learn everything that we just did. And then
Yeah.
your mind is now tainted. It's not this clear, hey, I can start fresh. Here's a problem. It's, hey, we've had this problem. Here's all the stuff we've been trying to do with it for all this time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now it's like, oh, I can't see past the trees either. We're like, what?
There is that problem, 100%. I would just say I kind of think back to when I came in. It's that there was very few books, white papers, or data on anything. We had to make it up as we go. At least now when you come in, there's tons of books, there's experts, there's data.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to wade through the old tribal knowledge, the conventional wisdom. You have to discount all that, but at least there's something to go on.
So I'm going to leave you guys with a joke, a dad joke my kid taught me, and it's completely relevant to this conversation. Okay, why did the chicken cross the road?
Why?
To get to the idiot's house. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Chicken.
Chicken who?
It took me a second, but I got that one. Now I'm telling everybody because I feel it's kind of relevant to this conversation. Jared, it's been awesome having you on the show, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good luck on the current endeavor, and I can't wait to hear more about that when that becomes a thing.
Right on.
And yeah, all right. So, folks, thanks for listening. This has been another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast episode. Getting down to the wire, coming up on 600. I anticipate that's going to be sometime in May. We'll do probably another 2-hour live, like a call-in, phone-in type of situation. So, yeah, for that one, I anticipate you guys, I'd love to have some people live on it. So, anyway, for James and myself, and once again, thanks, Jeremiah, for being on. Folks, thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. See you later. Bye-bye.
This is Bella. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave my dad a review and share this with your friends. Bye.